Ron Johnson, who I have to say is probably the lowest of the low, the senator from Wisconsin, in terms of the big lie conspiratorial stuff. His latest thing is we need to get rid of Obamacare. And of course, that makes me chuckle because it kind of reminds me of, remember, every week was going to be infrastructure week in the Trump administration. And every week we were going to get his health care plan, which for some reason we never got. So again, I think Obamacare has its challenges, but it's certainly better than nothing. So is there a Republican health care plan? And if there is one, or if there isn't one, what should it be?
Well, it's interesting to see how Mitch McConnell responded to this proposal, to see Senator Johnson kind of going rogue. And Mitch McConnell didn't like that because he felt like it was kind of distracting from the key messages that they want to really stick to. I think for 2022, things like inflation, COVID restrictions, opening schools back up, the failure in Afghanistan, the failure in energy policy. And so I think in some ways that Mitch McConnell would agree with you, Dave, the fact that when Republicans held all three, both houses and the White House, they didn't get their Obamacare replacement through. And that vote was very crucial. It was Senator John McCain who actually did his downvote. I was very disappointed by it, but I thought it was interesting because he was calling for regular order. And we've seen now that the shoe's on the other foot. Democrats don't care about regular order. So may he rest in peace, but I disagreed with that vote from Senator McCain because there was a replacement that Republicans did have. And there's a book that I'd recommend to all our viewers and listeners by an editor over at National Review. He wrote it when he was at the Examiner. His name's Phil Klein. And it's basically it's a book exclusively on Republican and conservatives and their replacements for Obamacare. And he looks at the plans. So there's literally a book on this specific issue, and he looks at the whole range. So there's the pure libertarian plan, which is just pure free market forces for healthcare, and then all the way to something that is, Obamacare light, and to have, I think that we do need to have some form of safety net for people who are mentally ill, homeless people who are truly unable to work. We need a safety net in healthcare and other services for them. But there's a lot, I think, that we can do to really focus more specifically on the high risk pools, and then keep as many people we can in the free market for healthcare. And that's what I would like to see, and that we don't have with Obamacare. And the fact that Obama's big lie for him was that if you like your doctor, you can keep it. That came back to haunt him severely. I'm actually someone who was a victim. When I left my, employer W-2 plan to be a contractor, I did lose my healthcare provider when I switched to an exchange plan. So he lied to me. So I think that healthcare isn't really a hot button topic right now, but I think there are a lot of policy proposals out there from the right. What do you think, Dave?
Well, I would say a couple of things. First of all, if there was a Republican healthcare plan, I never heard about it, and I tend to follow this pretty closely. And I remember when Leslie Stahl interviewed Donald Trump, and of course, Kayleigh McEnany, his press secretary, infinitely said, "Here's the president's healthcare plan," and it was nothing. It was just a bunch of summaries. It wasn't actually a plan. So again, if there was one, I didn't see it. But let me take a step back and say I'm the biggest free market person around. But the free market does not apply to healthcare. When I hear people talk about free market, patient-based healthcare, that's great. Maybe it exists on some other planet, but it doesn't exist on this planet. The only healthcare plans I've seen that actually come close to keeping costs to the rate of inflation, which, to put it mildly, we have not done. The 80% of the population that is healthy subsidizes the 20% of the population that is sick. If there's another system that works, I'd love to hear about it. I don't think it exists because you have to have healthy people buying into the system. So when they're sick, other healthy people will buy into the system. Otherwise, you have what economists call adverse selection, where only sick people buy in and the whole system collapses. So again, I think that the Medicare system that we have, which is publicly financed but privately delivered, because, and I know conservatives don't like to hear this, but healthcare is one of the very, very, and I can't say very enough times, very few areas where the government does a better job than the private sector at controlling cost. And the main reason our system is so expensive is because it's so privatized. And people say Medicare's gone up 400% over a certain amount of time. Well, that's true. But in the insurance-based system went up 700% during that exact same time. So Medicare is out of whack because congressmen are making it pay $1,200 for $75 back screws that are made in their district. But I think overall it's the best plan. And I think what Obamacare should have done, and it was, by the way, I'm always full disclosure, it was Democrat Joe Lieberman from Connecticut. Gee, were there insurance companies in Connecticut? I can't remember. Who struck down the so-called public option, which would allow Medicare to compete with insurance companies. And I think that would have kept them honest. And I do think you also have to have like an independent payment advisory board, and the government can pay for certain things and it can't pay for certain things. If there's a $500,000 colon cancer drug that adds 6 months to your life, I'm sorry, if you're wealthy, you can afford it. And if you're not, you can't. That's true with a lot of things in our society. So that would be my solution.